It's from that moment that they come and tell you what happened and you start to hear the story and develop the evidence, that it's just makes you think to yourself, I just can't believe that people would do something like this to a child. It just emblazons into your mind. So it's not the trial that's challenging. It's taking that emotional weight by hearing their story. And then once the trial's over, that doesn't actually end anything either, because they're still right in there with you and they just kind of remain there.
Howdy, and welcome to the show. Cooper's Code focuses on legal issues and notable practitioners, distilling wisdom so we all achieve the best results for our clients. I'm Miles Cooper, and I'm thrilled to share part 3 of this conversation with Scott Montgomery. While we've had other people who I think have handled some child sex abuse cases, we haven't really delved into the challenges and differences in handling those types of cases versus your regular personal injury case. Can you help us understand some of the difficulties, the nuances, and why you've decided to handle some of these cases?
I handle them because I believe that they are important. And I believe that they are under-tried. Although maybe that's becoming less true. Maybe more people are trying them. But I think they are a historically under-tried type of case that I think in reality most often are the types of cases that need trials the most in terms of bringing out, certain failures, in whether it's a foster care system or a school or just someone not looking out for another who owes a duty. I think they're really important in that regard to bring to the surface. So that's why, kind of why I do them and why I think they're important and why. And so on the one hand, to the difficulty, the point of difficulty on them, on the one hand, because I think they're morally right. And like I said, again, not the biblical moral, but just the moral in the sense of, I just feel like you're on the right side of it. While I feel that way, they are also very emotionally draining. And it's not the trial that's emotionally draining. That's fine. That's just is the same. It's from the moment the case walks in your door and you hear about this horrible thing that happened, you just put that into this memory bank of all these other horrible things that you don't really want to know about and would prefer not to know about. But now they're there. And then you live with it for a number of years and work on that file and see those people. And then you go to trial. So it's not the trial that's draining. It's from that moment that they come and tell you what happened and you start to hear the story and develop the evidence, that it's just makes you think to yourself, I just can't believe that people would do something like this to a child. And that's very different than a car crash or something like that, where, even if someone's intoxicated and they get behind the wheel, I don't agree with that conduct. But it's different than making these decisions to do these things to a child. There's just a different level of wrongdoing in my mind. And a drunk driving crash, I'm thinking about the conduct in that in terms of how we're going to present that, but I'm really more thinking about the injury. I don't put that in that doesn't stick with me. And I go, wow, I can't believe how evil that person was for driving drunk. I think that's bad conduct. It should be punished. That's not safe. You're putting everyone in danger. I don't like it, but I'm not thinking there's a special place in hell necessarily for that person. Right. That's different than these types of cases, because as soon as you take one of these types of cases, it just sits there with, again, like I said, with kind of, with those pictures, like the pictures you see when people are dead in a car, like I was describing, that sticks with you too. I can see that in my mind. I can picture every single child sex abuse case that I've handled and I'm handling. I can picture the allegations, the conduct. If I've met the offender and the people involved, I can picture them in my mind and it just sticks with you. I mean, I've done lots and lots of cases over the last 13 years. I can't profess without seeing a list to reiterate every single one to you. I could reiterate to you every single one of the child sex abuse cases I've handled because it just emblazons into your mind. So it's not the trial that's challenging. It's taking that emotional weight by hearing their story. And then once the trial's over, that doesn't actually end anything either, because they're still right in there with you and they just kind of remain there. And I have a small child myself. As weird as this sounds, I don't think I could have presented the cases the way they needed to be presented, believed in the cases the way they needed to be believed in, continue to feel that belief towards the cases I'm handling now if I was not a father. Because when you are a father and you realize that these children need your protection more than anything, you also realize with that the children that don't get that protection and the children that are harmed in these ways, it just feels like protecting them and holding people accountable is so much more important than if you'd asked me 4 years ago. It's not that I would have said this was okay or anything like that. It's just I couldn't feel that emotion when you've held your child. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. It's interesting. The only analogy I can share with you on this front, shortly after our first child was born, I'd been working on a trundle bed case with Cynthia McGuinn.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a positional asphyxiation. A young child had gone up.
You're giving me chills just thinking about that.
And my response before I had a child, my tolerance for like violent movies, awful things happening, terrible things in cases, very, very high. I asked to be taken off that case because once I had a child and saw what those parents were going through, because it was a fatality, and they'd sent their daughter up for a nap, and they checked on her 45 minutes later, and she had dropped some things in the trundle bed and had been leaning. There wasn't a mattress in it, and she'd been leaning over, and her little feet had pushed her forward, and she couldn't pull herself back out. She was blue. And I've found since then there are certain cases that I would prefer not to work on with young children. They're not as young now. And so I raise that because one of the questions I was going to have for you is, with a young child and another on the way, it sounds like that just further drives your passion for justice rather than have you step back and say, no, I don't want to know how evil the world is.
What you're describing with the trundle bed case gave me literal chills, because every time you put your child down for a nap or for the night, and everyone's heard of SIDS, and I mean, just as a crib, but you're thinking to yourself, what if in the morning they're luckily by the time they're 2, they don't apparently don't. That's not very unlikely, but I know that. So what you're describing to me gave me a chill. In terms of fueling a passion for justice for children, I think when you are a father, a parent, a grandfather, someone who knows, like I said, that children need the highest level of protection because they cannot protect themselves. When you work on cases where children are not afforded that level of protection, whether it's due to the negligence of a school, whether it's due to a defective trundle bed, it doesn't matter what it is. But when you're dealing with kids, and you have to be extra careful, and as a parent, you know that. And so you just take that and you look at the conduct and the harm, and you are able to, I think, have definitely a different gear for that type of case. And fueling a passion for justice would be another way to put it, but a different gear in the sense that I never, like when I go to trial, I am working every day, all day till it's over. Doesn't mean I don't, go out and go running, do these self-care things that I think I tell my associates are so important, because you're working 14 hours a day, but you're not present in the courtroom as a result because you're exhausted. And there's a point where preparation also needs to kind of jive with mental health. And there's a balance, not because I'm trying to balance my life during trial. I'm not, but I'm trying to balance the best courtroom advocate I can be. And working 14 hours on a Saturday is not going to make me the best courtroom advocate I could be. So, but to just kind of close the loop on that, when there's like the last trial, every single day for a couple months before, and then for the whole trial, I worked on that case. And that's really all I did. And it is different because you have this, like I said, different gear, different desire that you go, I'm sitting here and it's Saturday at noon. And this is the fourth weekend in a row that I've been sitting here on Saturday at noon. I would love to be at the park with my kid, but I'm here because I owe an obligation to a different kid. And that obligation is really important. And when I would leave every day, or on a Saturday or whatever, we would tell my daughter, and she was repeating this by the end. We didn't explain what we meant by it, but to explain, where am I going? Why is dad not around? Because I liked, on the weekends we go to the park. We said, well, he's helping the little girl. He's helping the little girl. And so when I would go to leave, she would say, oh, your dad has to go help the little girl. And so, it's just, it does fuel passion. It makes it so you can work that extra little bit to get the best of yourself and not regret it and not feel like you're sitting there going, I wish I was somewhere else. I need to be somewhere. It kind of lets you, I don't know if that answers it or describes it, but I just don't know how to describe it better. There's something about it that just makes it so you can pull something deeper inside of you to just keep going.
I think you answered it.
But that trundle bed thing, to me, honestly, like when you talk about stuff like that scares the crap out of me because we see all these awful things. Let's put aside child sex abuse cases for a minute. All these awful things with products and, baby food. And I don't work on these things, but when you're a parent, all you do is look for stuff like that, asphyxiation because of a crib or, asphyxiation because of this toy or that toy. And it's so scary because the harm to a child as a parent is just, it's something that just when you told me the trundle bed thing and about that situation, I totally can relate because it's just awful.
So wait until your child is a little bit older. And I was walking with my daughter down the street a couple days ago, and we walked through an intersection. Something happened, and she looks over, and she's 11. She says, "Don't tell me you're going to say you had a case." And and I was reminded we worked with Karen Jo Coonan for a long time, and she said how her kids would always complain. Whenever she was telling them not to do something or to be careful about something, she would go on with this, "I had a case." And now I've become that guy, and you will become that guy with your daughter.
I'm already there. I'm already there. We do it. But you're trying to impart knowledge to keep them safe, and while balancing the desire to not have them be fearful. But I already do that. Maybe I'm just really fearful of the world, but she already can say, and she's, like I said, 2.5. She can already say, like, I don't go in the road without a grown up because I could get a big ouchie. I guess we didn't directly explain that because of a case, but that's because, how many cases have we all worked on where a car hits a person? And we know, so to your point, yeah. And I will illustrate with stories to her to hopefully give her a healthy dose of fear while still becoming an independent young woman as she grows.
I think it would be wise to explore how you balance the all-in nature of being a successful trial lawyer while still having a young one and like I said, another one on the way. Do you have any recommendations for how you've been able to reach a right balance for you?
The right balance, as you put it, is what is right for you because everyone's different. And I have always been I'm not going to say workaholic, but I have always worked really hard at the law because I enjoyed it. Like I told you early on, wanting to try cases, but also having to do this other work. I was the kind of person when I first started, and this is, again, maybe this isn't necessarily something to aspire to, but when I first started, I would never leave the office before my boss had left the office because I just felt like that was a bad look. And that's not something to aspire to. I don't hold anyone to that standard, but that's always how I've been. And now having a child and wanting to be around your child, you do have to balance that. The way I've balanced it best is just by incorporating her as much as possible into the life that I live as a lawyer. And my firm's really good for that because our firm has undergone this weird, I think everything in life has cycles. When I started, there were no babies for a long time. Our firm has, I believe, like either 8 or 10 total children under the age of, let's just say 6.
Wow.
Right. So every single office my office has a Little People's set up, the Barbie house thing. Little People's like what they like now. Every office has different toys. And so like my kid comes to the office all the time. And all the other kids, when they come in, they go from office to office looking at all the toys because different offices have different toys, different little kids. So, I mean, we could feel basically 2 sides of a basketball team at this point. And so I integrate her a lot as much as possible into that life. So like she'll come to the office and spend time with me on weekends if I'm needing to work. Sometimes she'll come in with me, and putting that aside, if I'm not in trial, I have now become better at turning it off to a degree at a reasonable hour and then being present with her. Because the last thing you want to do is, and I'm guilty of this at times, because that it's an all-in thing for us. Like when I go home, I don't like punch out. I have my phones, people are texting me, people are calling me, emailing me. And I've tried to be better about when I leave the office, whether that's at, 4 or 7, whatever time I leave the office, depending on what's going on, being present and not like playing with my phone and not doing, because she will even say, Daddy, no phone, because she wants your attention and she deserves it. And so there's nothing on my phone that can't wait till tomorrow in truth or until she goes to bed. So I think that's one way I've kind of managed is just basically trying to integrate her more into my life, my work life, which is easy right now because like I said, our office is just a bunch of children basically. And then being good about being present at home. Do I always implement that? No. But am I trying? Yeah. If I'm at home, I'm trying to play with her and trying to maximize to read to her, just focus on her because she knows I'm not always there. She knows I have to go to work.
If you're enjoying what we're doing here with Cooper's Code, please help us extend our reach by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and consider sharing an episode with a friend. Additionally, we want to know who you want to hear on the show. Have an interview suggestion? Email us at podcast@coopers.law. With you being as young as you are, you have decades still of practice ahead of you. Where do you see yourself? 15, 20? Well, the nice thing is you love what you do. So where do you see yourself in 15, 20 years in terms of what your practice looks like, what types of cases you're handling?
That's a great question. I've thought about that a lot lately. I think it's just the same. I really love what I do. And like anything, I mean, it's a job. So do I love every minute of everything I do? No, of course not. In the macro, do I feel like I'm doing something important, like that I'm making a difference for people, that I'm doing the best that I can to, right wrongs? Yeah, I do. I also feel good that we're training, you say I'm young, but we're training younger lawyers, because I'm almost 40. And we're training a younger generation of lawyers, I'm involved in that, and staff and people who, and law clerks, people who work with us, people who are interested and engaged and want to learn as well, which I think is really cool. So I think where I see myself in truth is I would just keep doing exactly what I'm doing. I would just keep trying cases, which is where I'm happiest, is in the courtroom. Keep trying a few cases a year, which is I've been pretty consistent about over the last few years, and just have a team in place of people who are experienced enough and believe in what we're doing enough that I can work a little less on some of the back end day to day and just do more of what I truly enjoy. I mean, I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm saying like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, do I still necessarily want to be doing some of the things that I do now that are just more mundane day-to-day tasks, perhaps not. So in the perfect world, I would be a part of a team where I'm less important to the team, but I'm still there because I would not want to not be in the courtroom. That goes to Brown Green being such a positive mentor for me. I mean, he's still in the courtroom and, he's done this for 50 years or plus, and he still loves it. And I think that's kind of more where I'm going to be at and everyone around me tells me that as well, that I'm happiest when, even though I'm working the most, oddly enough, I'm happiest when I'm in a trial because I'm engaged. I am doing what I'm trained to do. I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And there's just a different kind of, for want of a better word, like a different vibe that I have when I'm engaged in something like that. So I think I'm just going to keep doing the same thing, but maybe send a few less emails on the day-to-day part of it, by the time I'm 60.
Email, I think, is the bane of many lawyers' existence in terms of the communication.
I know you have a pretty good, I saw your thing about checking email and all that. I actually, I've already, haven't met you for very long, but I've already learned some important, I think, things from you, like little nuggets. And I thought that was cool. I'm not sure I can implement that.
For those who have not had the misfortune of emailing me, the auto response is that I don't check email with any regularity, but I have somebody who does, and they will prioritize it. And I generally handle email about once a week, which, to be honest, is not entirely true.
Feeling.
I find myself, unfortunately, sucked into email more than I would like. What I say about face-to-face communication or telephonic communication in that response, though, I truly believe, which is we are far better collaborators, even with opposing counsel or adjusters or what have you, when you communicate with the tonality of voice. Any email is just piling on something else into somebody else's inbox.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times I actually do agree with that. And I think the other reason I thought you did it, which I think would be great, is that I feel like email and constant traffic of texts and email and these things gets in the way of these kind of necessary deep levels of thinking. And what I've found, as I've gotten further in my career, what I liked about being an associate, especially in the early time, is you would just get a task and I'd be like, oh, figure out this law. And I love that. You just work on it for a day or two. You don't have any clients yourself. So no one's calling you. They don't want to talk to you. They couldn't care less. They want to talk to your boss. And so you have these deep periods where you can really get into it and you can really start to understand things. What I've noticed about email and all the chatter and everything we deal with just moment to moment is it really prohibits that. And so I miss that. And so I kind of thought that was part of why you have that, is that I wish I could dive deeper, more often dive deeper into cases, spend an hour or 2 hours on, each case once a week, deep thinking. Because I think in the macro, you'd end up in a lot better spot, but it's just a hard thing to implement because you're just constantly barraged in our current.
So that is definitely the genesis of that. It is a Cal Newport digital minimalism deep think technique that I've been imperfect in implementing because I sometimes worry about not being as responsive as I should be. And what I've come to learn is that we are not as important as we think. That unread email, it'll be just fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with you. One of the most fun things I did more recently was I got pulled in to be involved in a summary adjudication opposition, which I have not done for a long time. Mm-hmm. It was a massive motion, and it was an all hands on deck. And I do think of myself as being a pretty strong writer. And to bury myself for 4 days and tune out everything else was so liberating.
Yeah.
And we short of trial, and I think that's part of why I love trial, and perhaps part of why you love trial, is that's exactly what it is. You can be mono-focused and excellent in one thing.
You're totally right. And I think to that end, and I don't usually even tell people that I don't do an auto reply or anything, but no one ever gives you problems about not getting back to them immediately when you say the reason, hey, I'm sorry, I'm in a trial. Because every lawyer and client understands that. I mean, or 99.9%. The ones that don't shouldn't be lawyers and clients for you. And, lawyers and stuff, because everyone gets that. So I think you're probably right. Part of the why, I probably really do love trial, but it partially is also the fact that trial allows you to have that monofocus and to justify it. And so I think you're right. I'm happy because I'm actually doing what I'm designed to do. We're not designed, and that's just like the summary adjudication thing you were talking about. Like, you're doing legal thinking, like you're doing what you're designed to do. Like, as a lawyer, do I spend like a lot of my life responding yes or no to scheduling emails about depositions or to a client that wants to know this? Yeah. Is that important?
What I would say to you is that is completely delegable.
Yeah.
That has been one of the more freeing things is I have somebody on my team.
Smart.
Pretty much that's all he does is email and yes, no's on scheduling.
It's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we kind of get into the tail end of things, is there anything else that you think is important for our listeners to learn from our conversation?
One of the most important things about what we do as trial lawyers and as part of this system, this jury system, is that and what I've seen in doing this is that we take people who don't want to be there. Like, no one gets a jury summons and it's like, I'm really excited to go to jury service. And hopefully by the end of that process, they understand the importance of it. And so I'll just give an example. In the last case that we did, no different than any other one, everyone shows up. People are grumbling. You can kind of hear it there. It's early in the morning. It's a big room. People are milling about. The judge gives a talk on how important jury service is and says, I know all the excuses, so you went online to get this 20 ways to get out of jury service. I already read it, which I think is kind of, I think he's half joking, but I think he's half serious, basically saying, don't feed me some line because this is important. And so then you get into it and, people are kind of have different levels of engagement with the voir dire and that process. And you can tell some people don't want to be there, and they kind of get themselves out of it, by saying things that are kind of extreme. And we all know how that goes. And then you end up with a seated jury. And at the end of the day, those people are willing to be there, but you can kind of infer that maybe they're not all that excited to be there, because our joke in society is like, jury service, what would you rather go to the dentist or to go get jury service? Which, by the way, is really mean to dentists. I know a lot of great dentists. By the end of it, though, and this is what's really important and kind of inspiring to me in what we do, by the end of most of the cases that I've tried, the jury has a completely opposite feel about it. They'll say basically, I agree with what the judge said in the beginning. That was really important. I feel like we did something that was meaningful. We kind of listened to each other and we collaborated. And I would recommend, and I've heard this many times, I'm not just saying this, like this sounds like something a lawyer just says. I swear I've heard this many, many times. I would actually recommend to other people that they do jury service at least once in their life, because it's a very important experience now having done it. So like just an example in the last one, too, because we're kind of in a time right now, particularly, in the run up to the election, which is when that last trial was, where, you have people on both sides who are debating, we'll put that in quotes, but really it's like, a lot of negativity towards each other and a lot of not very civil discourse. And what the jurors said to me, and after when we were speaking with them, in this particular one that really stood out to me, was that, but all the other things, we would do this again, we'd recommend this is really important, but also that they were very proud that they had been able to sit down after listening to all this evidence and go through a very civil discourse with each person getting a chance to talk and all that to reach their decision on each issue. And they actually juxtapose that against the current state of our democracy outside of the jury room, with Donald Trump saying, X was in Harris saying Y, and everyone saying nasty things, and news anchors from Fox or CNN, everyone just, they actually kind of created, this is my word, but they kind of compared and contrasted the democracy that occurred in their jury service in the jury room with the democracy that existed outside, knowing, as the judge explained it, that both were fundamental parts of democracy. And so what they said that was really meaningful to me was, look, like this part of the democracy in this jury room, this works. This is no joke. Despite whatever their political affiliations, I didn't get into that, but despite kind of what I sensed was unfortunately, a general malaise as to the state of affairs outside with people being very non-civil. Basically, we had a civil conversation, we debated, we voted, and this is really a critical part of our democracy. And so I think that to hear people actually kind of basically say that in so many words was really empowering, and in the sense of making me want to keep, you asked, what am I going to do in 20 years? Well, why would I not keep doing something where I can have that kind of impact? So I'm just going to keep doing this.
Well, that is a rousing way to strike on the importance of the Seventh Amendment. And perhaps through that kind of discourse, we may be able to knit our country back together again.
The way was said to me by lay people, not lawyers, was really, really, really powerful. I might be putting a fine point on some of it in terms of the language, but the theme and the concept that is. I mean, because this works. That's my takeaway. And that's their feeling as ordinary people. This works, regardless of whether we think this other part of it's working right now. And they're right. I'm not a particularly political person, so I don't, but there are very broken parts of our system, but I don't think the jury system is in any way, shape, or form a broken system. It is a fully functional system where citizens can and do engage every single day with their democracy and do it with a willingness once they understand the importance of it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here, Scott.
Thank you, Miles. It's really a pleasure to get to know you. I look forward to getting to know you and continuing to watch you guys on the podcast in the future.
Well, it's been really fun watching your career, and I really enjoyed getting to meet you and chat with you. And thank you for listening today. Please email us at podcast@coopers.law with questions, comments, feedback, and suggestions for who we should have on the show. Like what you heard? Share us with a colleague and leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. To all of you doing justice out there, happy hunting.